We are making a series of free video tutorial on animation using Blender 2.79b. In part 1 of the series, we shall animate a cube to move up and down along the z-axis. Once it is animated and rendered, it will look like the cube movement in the following video. To get the final video output as we have seen here, we have to work in 3 stages. Number 1, we must animate the cube. Number 2, we must add material to the cube, set the lamps and camera. Number 3, we must render the animation and save it as a video file. In part 1 of this tutorial, we shall cover stage 1. In part 2, we shall cover the rest. Now we shall animate the cube. To animate the cube, long window below the windows is the timeline window, in which we shall set keyframes for the cube to animate it. In the 3D window in the left bottom corner, you will see the screencast of the key which is pressed or the mouse button clicked, which is done to execute a particular command in Blender. This you can use as a visual guide to learn how to do a particular operation. Now press 1 and then 5 in the number pad to get into front ortho view. Next press N to open up the properties panel on the right side of the 3D window. Once you select the cube in the properties panel, you can see its location, rotation and scale settings. We can change them as we desire to change the cube's location, rotation or scale settings. Now we shall have a look at the timeline window. Before we start setting keyframes to animate the cube, we need to do some preliminary setting. First, we shall set frame rate, which is 24 frames per second, as you see here. This is the default value, which we shall also use. In the timeline window, we must set the start and end frame number. The start frame number is 1 and the end frame number we shall set as 240. Normally, the end frame number will depend on the length of the video we make. If the video length is of 10 seconds duration at 24 frames per second, the end frame will be 240. If the video is 20 seconds long, the end frame will be 480, which is 24 frames per second multiplied by 20 seconds. Depending on the length of the video, the end frame number must be inserted. Now we shall start inserting the keyframes to animate the cube. To insert a keyframe at frame number 1, press the I key to open up the Insert Keyframe drop-down menu. Next, click on Location. A keyframe will be inserted in the timeline window, which is indicated by the yellow line. Now, move the timeline cursor to frame 120. Move up the cube 5 units along the z-axis. Insert a keyframe for this location. Next, move the cursor to frame number 240. Move the cube to location with z equal to 0. Insert a keyframe for this location. We have inserted 3 keyframes at frame number 1, 120 and 240. To play the animation, take the timeline cursor to frame number 1. Press the play button. To stop the animation, press the escape key. Now save the file. The point that we need to note is that though we have set only 3 keyframes, Blender has worked out the location of the cube for all the intermediate frames automatically. When you render it, these intermediate frames are created by Blender. This helps us to see a smooth transition of the cube when we render the scene. Now save the file once more and exit Blender. This completes part 1 of the tutorial.